Thursday, 24th of October. Welcome to the Totally Football Show, everyone. Delighted to say that Colin Millar's here with us today. All right, Colin?
Hello, James.
Good. Duncan Alexander also on board.
Hi.
And Charlie Eccleshare, special guest appearance from tennis's Charlie Eccleshare.
Hello.
All right. Pol Ballus is on the way as well. He was at Barcelona Bayern Munich on Wednesday. Oof. Part of that exotic Champions League midweek. Great to see the continental action with Czech's notes. Aston Villa top, Liverpool second, and Manchester City third. Oof. What did you make of it? The best match day so far?
Yeah, I mean, there were some exciting games. I still find this thing a bit gross, these extra two games. It just still feels really craven. But yeah, there were some good games. I do think the fact that we are obviously still getting our heads around it is a bit weird. Trying to find meaning in it. I don't know at what point. Well, like
existential
kind
Champions
of,
League.
but like when I think of like the Premier League and how much at games you're checking scores and there's so much angst and all of that, I think we're a long way from that. But maybe by MD7 we might get there.
I think
just a few more match days to get through.
As each match day goes past, the league table becomes more of a thing. And I mean, as you say, it's quite funny. It goes Villa, Liverpool, Man City, Monaco, the big four.
Brest, of course.
Yeah, and Brest. So, but I think as it stands, you've got teams like Milan and Atletico Madrid, both in out of the 24. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think we will get some really good drama in January. Weirdly,
I mean, there'll be a weird thing as well. I was thinking, that you'll be competing in the group stage with teams from your own country, which we've never really had before.
Yeah.
So there will be the ability for kind of Villa to knock out Liverpool from the top 8 or whatever it is.
Absolutely.
Not by playing each other, but we'll have to keep an eye on each other's results.
That's so true.
Different dynamic.
Great week for the Premier League. All four sides winning. In fact, 4 English clubs have so far in 12 games in this newfangled league conceded just one goal between them. That was Christian Pulisic for Milan against Liverpool back on match day 1.
I mean, it's almost as if the Premier League sides saw us not get the 5th spot last season and were like, I took that personally, and they've decided between them to, grab it. 5 sides, a double-edged sword apparently, because look at the Germans. Stuttgart, the only one of their sides to win. They were 1-0 victors away at Juventus. Bayer Leverkusen, Bundesliga champions, got held 1-1 by Brest. Extraordinary stuff. Real Madrid beat Borussia Dortmund 5-2 after Dortmund were 2-0 up at half-time. Barcelona hammered Bayern Munich 4-1, and Leipzig lost at home to Liverpool. Yikes.
Yeah, I think this is probably the best midweek so far of these games. I mean, I agree with Charlie and Duncan that this feels very disconnected. But you looked at those Barcelona Bayern game and the Madrid Dortmund games and such high quality matches. But I think that the fact that the games don't matter that much kind of played a part in those games being so entertaining and so exciting that these games the teams had a bit of a free hit. And I think it was Diego Simeone on the first match day, whenever they got a last-minute winner, I think it was against RB Leipzig. And he said, because of the new format, there was no point in us drawing this match. Draw doesn't mean anything. Because if you're in a 4-team group and you draw, it's like, well, you're taking 2 points off somebody else. But that doesn't matter anymore. So I think what this does do is it gives teams more of an incentive to be a bit more attacking and to win. And obviously, you looked at Dortmund and you looked at Bayern and you kind of think, conceding that many goals and the way in which they played didn't work and could have been damaging. But in fact, they have quite a lot of time to recover that situation and they might approach things differently going forward. So they might learn more lessons from defeat than you would in victory. So yeah, I mean, I don't think we'll know for sure until the 7th or 8th match day when teams are qualifying or losing out altogether. But at the moment, I think it's more a case of if you can sort of pick and choose a couple of matches to really sink your teeth into it. It is quite enjoyable, I think.
And to be fair, I did do that thing going into Wednesday night, being like, I bet there aren't even any interesting matches. And then I saw the fixture and I was like, I'm quite up for quite a few of these games. In the end, I settled on Liverpool, which was a bad call.
I think where it's changed is, to your point, Charlie, you actually look through the fixtures and pick one, whereas before you tried almost to sort of keep across everything, like, Group H is in the balance or whatever, whereas now it's like, look, it's Barcelona against Bayern, that's me.
Which is a huge game, and I'm sure all of us tune in for that. But a lot of the other games that you wouldn't ordinarily have thought would have been bangers turned out to be so. For example, Lille with a little bit of a help from a controversial penalty, turning it around against Atletico Madrid to make it back-to-back victories against the Madrid sides. Also from Liga, Monaco with that huge win over Red Star Sverna Zvezda. Brest, as we mentioned. PSG, meanwhile, just a draw for them against PSV.
PSG are the worst performing French side so far at the tournament. I mean, it is interesting, just to quickly note, how this format as well has turned up Lille, now beating both of the Madrid teams. Monaco have beaten Barcelona. So I think you look at Liga in particular, those clubs are really thriving at the moment. And it's, I guess it kind of, that's what this format throws up as well. And very quickly, before we move on Monaco.
Yeah.
My favourite stat of the week, I don't know who else might have saw this, but Breel and Bolo scored for Monaco. His last 4 Champions League goals have been for 4 different clubs.
Nice.
That's a remarkable stat. Duncan, Colin's coming at you with stats. What you got?
No, fair play. Stun me.
Okay.
Studs up.
That game featured a quite remarkable goal from Singo. Did you see that? Singo goal for Monaco?
Yeah.
Wow.
Long range into the top corner.
Yeah. Still rising as it hits the net. Remarkable goal. There were some special goals this midweek. Perhaps your pick was the Erling Haaland Ibra-esque backheel volley?
That was pretty special. Yeah.
Or was it the Vinny number?
Vinny, yeah, probably the Vinny one, actually. That was... Yeah, from where he picks it up. That's
there was
a more
more time to
spectacular
enjoy
goal.
it. There was more of a could he?
There's also that moment where the camera sort of shows the different angle, and all of a sudden he's emerged, and you're actually like, oh, he's really got a good chance of scoring here.
Right.
From initially, it's kind of zoomed in tight to him, and it looks like he's just carrying up the pitch. Then all of a sudden, it opens up, and you're like, oh, hold on.
And it's that special kind of roar you only get when fans, are anticipating the goal, because it's like if this comes off, it's going to be an all-timer. So I enjoyed Lise Malou's equaliser for Brest as well.
Oh yeah, former Norwich City man, Brice Malou. I was roaring on the home side there. I was saying, come on, Stade Brestois.
Yeah.
Anyway, you got the Villa, Liverpool and Man City top. The other teams in the automatic qualifying spots are Monaco, Brest, indeed, Bayer Leverkusen, Inter and Sporting. So, how about that for a table? Should we get on to some of the action? And let's begin with events at Montjuic. Yeah, of all the narratives coming into this midweek of action, Barcelona's clash with Bayern Munich probably took centre stage. The former Bayern entities like Hansi Flick and Leverkusen, and the fact that Barcelona had such a terrible time at the hands of Bayern of late. Boy, did they get their revenge on Wednesday night. Pol Ballus was there, and he joins us now. Pol Ballus is here now with us. Pol, what a night to be at Montjuic watching Barcelona. What was it like?
Some night. Champions League nights are always different in Spain, but I would say that, Barcelona fans were missing that feeling for a while. The atmosphere was buzzing. Best attendance ever in Montjuic since Barcelona moved to that temporary stadium. I think that the crowd felt something that they had lost for a while, this sort of proud of being in the elite, or feeling that they belong to the elite of the Champions League. And that was something that they were craving for a long time.
I mean, you'd spoken of the kind of crisis that had existed with the Champions League for Barcelona ever since, really, that 8-2 at the hands of Bayern back in 2020. What a way to answer it with this 4-1 victory, and it could have been so many more. Slow start to the game. It wasn't until the 54th second of the match that Rafinha opened the scoring.
Yeah, exactly. I think that the traumas even go even further back than that 8-2 against Bayern. I still can remember the Liverpool game or the Rome game. The fact that they win against Bayern had a special symbolism because the fact of, we were speaking about that Bayern were the Bestia Negra, were this perfect enemy for Barcelona, the team that they just were not able to win. Just the fact that they had this rapid start with Rafinha. And I also think that there was a key thing, that they struggled. After the first goal, Bayern were decent, were really good. I think that they were on top of the game. But Barcelona knew how to navigate through that and just to bounce back, just to figure stuff in their minds and reply with force, which is basically what Champions League requires you to do. And if you want to be a solid team in there, you had to go through those phases. Barcelona did that. And I think that's really good news for the team, for any doubts that could be regarding the character of this team, because that's a really young squad. But I think that they proved in a way that they are up for the challenge. I don't know if they are going to be successful all the way, because that's a lot to say, but just to have this fighting spirit, that's still a lot in my opinion.
Absolutely. Rafinha earning the headlines, but the way that after Kane had equalised, had another goal disallowed prior to that, the collection of 17-year-olds, the kind of made in La Masia midfield, just didn't get intimidated at all, was really remarkable. 4 shots on target for Barcelona across the 90 minutes, and they scored with all 4 of them.
Yeah, and against Manuel Neuer, that is something that you possibly don't expect to happen.
Is it still that Manuel Neuer, though? Especially on the last Rafinha goal.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he probably is not like the best goalkeeper in the world in an extent that we used to rate him back in the day, but he's still Manuel Neuer. I mean, I don't want to, just look past him. I mean, just the fact of just what La Masia does, just bringing the likes of Marc Casador. That Marc Casador, who was a guy that was probably unknown for the general public, did his presentation last night. He was a guy that last season he didn't get many opportunities under Xavi. Many people inside the club believe that, well, maybe he didn't have the level and he had to go on loan. But he's been another guy that has been transformed under Hansi Flick. He's been given the confidence, and now he's just performing at a level that no one could expect. I don't want to forget about Lamine Yamal, of course, Pau Cubarsí, all the La Masia kids that are around there. You could see that this is a generation that really wanted to do that, really wanted to live this sort of a special night in Europe, because they have felt all the traumas in the past. They were fans. They knew how Barcelona suffered, how they struggled in the past, and they wanted to make it up. I think that Flick said something quite good and quite special after the game, which was the impact that, how you can sense that La Masia has an impact in this generation, because the players really care about each other. They have this sort of relationship that they want to do the best for their teammates, and the way that they live being Barcelona fans, and how they enjoy playing football in the way that they play is something that happens mainly because they've been playing together for a lot of years and because they have this Barcelona feeling inside them.
All 3 of Rafinha's goals assisted by La Masia products. The balls from Casador, as you mentioned, and also Yamal, quite extraordinary. What's the reaction been in the Catalan press this morning to ending this run against Bayern?
No, I mean, the reaction has been like, the confidence levels are just over the roof. Everyone is so excited. As I was saying, there's this sort of, it's not a revenge of the 8-2 because it's not that level, but it felt a bit like that in terms of, right, we can beat Bayern as well. And if you wondered, possibly like the day before, Real Madrid sent a bit of a message with the 5-2 win against Borussia Dortmund, because everyone is looking at the Clásico on Saturday. I think that Barcelona replied back with the strongest message that basically they can put in there. And now as I was saying, all the eyes and all the expectations are looking to Saturday. There's a Real Madrid against FC Barcelona, possibly in the best moment of the season for Barcelona. I would say that, everyone here is quite excited, and I don't dare to say that Barcelona are favorites, but everyone here in Barcelona and the reaction in Catalunya is that Barcelona are ready to go to the Bernabeu and just to try to win that game, because they are in this state of confidence right now.
Magnificent. Paul, thank you so much. Paul, of course, spoke more about the Clásico in Tuesday's European edition of the Totally Football Show. Paul, thank you so much for being with us, and we'll catch up with you soon.
It's been a pleasure. See you.
Thanks, Paul. Pol Ballus in Barcelona. Wow, what a game that was. Rafinha, Colin?
Yeah, I mean, like, whenever you see Vinicius Junior scoring that hat-trick on Tuesday, and with Real Madrid, obviously, and there's the El Clásico coming up, and then you see Rafinha's response. And Rafinha, we all know him to be a very good player, potentially one of the best forwards in the world, but his time at Barcelona hasn't been all that smooth. He's one of those players that has maybe kind of come in and out of games, and when you see some of the other attacking options that Barcelona have had, especially with Lamine Yamal coming through, and the potential that he has and what he represents, there was almost a little bit of doubt. There's now Rafinha, kind of one of these sellable assets for Barcelona's finances, but I think he's probably one of the players that's come on the most under Hansi Flick. And I mean, we saw against Bayern Munich, just those finishes were just unbelievable finishes.
Right foot.
Yeah. It's such, and then the third one was such a clean strike into the bottom corner. I think.
And the chest control before it. That was a good chest.
It's a good old chest. I mean, I love the first finish as well. The way he rounds the keeper.
Yeah, you don't see that very often. When he does a double touch, he takes it round, and Neuer almost gets it, and he takes another touch. Excellent stuff.
Gary Lineker was talking to us recently about the death of rounding the goalkeeper. And you
Really?
do see it a lot less. Yeah, he said players don't do it so much anymore. But he showed it can be very effective.
First time that Bayern had ever conceded 4 goals in a group stage / league phase match in Champions League history. Their performance actually had Burnley FC trending on Wednesday night.
I think one of the interesting things is for this Barcelona Bayern Munich game is kind of been a bit of a sort of kind of people, as you were, into the kind of the top level of European football, and teams who are trying to, what style of play do these clubs actually want to have. And whenever Barcelona last beat Bayern Munich, it was whenever Pep Guardiola was manager of Bayern. And that was a time when Bayern were trying to copy what Barcelona were doing to be more successful. And now you can very much see that Barcelona are trying to copy what Bayern have done with the Hansi Flick appointment, with the style of play, Robert Lewandowski as well, of course. But it's interesting how those two teams almost see the other as the benchmark for where they want to be.
Well, Michael Cox has got a piece coming out today which has got an amazing graph in it. Not a sense that you say that often, but like it is genuinely astounding. It's basically plotting offsides provoked and through balls played. And Barcelona are just massive outliers this season because they play...
So one axis is offsides provoked and the other one is through balls played that don't get called for offside.
No, through balls played in an attacking sense.
Oh, in an attacking
offside.
sense.
So essentially, if
you're able to do both,
they play a mad high line that works most of the time.
Yeah,
and they also
looked like it wasn't going to for a period.
Yeah, I mean it is risky, but and then they also have the players to thread balls through, and it's working really well. And it's kind of almost rebirthed them as a club and made it exciting. I think for years, I don't know about other people, but when Barcelona were on TV, you'd be like, oh, they're a bit turgid these days. Whereas they feel like they've rebooted.
Yeah,
it's good.
I hear you. What Premier League sides are high on that graph? Is it Spurs? Are they any good at that?
Villa always provoke tons of offsides.
Brighton
they tend to lead that.
Brighton.
Well, you talk about especially the offsides. Barcelona are averaging 6.5 offsides a game for the other team in that league. And that number doesn't really mean anything. It's extraordinarily high because since VAR came in 2017, the highest in any of the top 5 leagues in Europe was Aston Villa last season, and that was 4.4.
Really?
And we all spoke about Aston Villa's incredible ability to catch teams offside. Barcelona are 2 more per game on average higher than that, which is incredible.
Just to back up Colin's point about them aping Bayern, the only teams playing more through balls this season than Barcelona are Bayern.
Is that right?
But with a less effective offside trap.
Well, as Paul was mentioning, on Saturday it is the Clasico at the Bernabeu. Real Madrid, Barcelona. Real Madrid, who on Tuesday came up with a none more Real Madrid performance against Borussia Dortmund. Dortmund, who arrived in Madrid looking for revenge for last June's Wembley final and looked like they were going to get it. Half-time on Tuesday night, they were leading to 2-0. Wonderful goals from Donyell Malen and Jamie Gittins. Real Madrid, who were beaten in the last round by Lille, suddenly looking in all sorts of trouble. But Duncan, even for you, if there's ever a team against whom 2-0 is a dangerous scoreline, it's Real Madrid.
Yeah, or Bournemouth. So, yeah, they came from... I mean, it took them till the hour mark.
Those two teams did meet in a pre-season friendly not long ago, didn't they?
Very similar teams in a lot of ways. Equalised through Rudiger with a thumping header. And then Vinicius took over.
Wow.
The substitution in the 55th minute from Dortmund, bringing on central defender Anton for Jamie Gittins,
Right,
in a sort of tactical switch to keep things tight, probably didn't work very well, did it? I mean, it's easy to say that in hindsight, but whenever a system is working so well, and I think, especially in the context of that game, when Real Madrid had Lucas Vazquez playing at right back, a player who is not a right back but loves to get forward, and obviously went on to score one of the goals by coming forward and smashing one home, but that substitution, he was pinned back before that, and he was very uncomfortable, and that just sort of changes the momentum of the game. And I think when you're playing a team like Real Madrid, like for Real Madrid to come from 2-0 down to win 5-2, and for Dortmund to be the team that loses it, there's two very strong narratives going on there, and it did feel inevitable as soon as Rudiger got that header, and of course within 2 minutes, which is exactly what happened against Bayern in the semi-finals of the Champions League last season.
I was going to say, I mean, Bayern took off Harry Kane, didn't they, at the Bernabeu semi, which I think then Tuchel tried to say was a kind of injury thing. Yeah, but at the time, again, it felt a little bit like, don't invite them onto you. But that is also what Real's aura does to team, because it is terrifying, that fear of this like sense of inevitability. We need to do something.
Vinicius with the second goal, the first of a hat-trick for him, the second of which was the one we described earlier, where he gets the ball early and basically, I was going to say outpaces, but it wasn't much of a
what an Emre Can.
Emre Can, who kind of after
Jogs
a metre or two goes.
Yeah, I did quite like that. It was like, you go. It reminded me of playing like schoolboy rugby and people just running past you, and what you want to do is look like you're trying, but you're not really, and you're kind of happy enough for them to go
when
past.
you're crossing the road, you don't actually speed up, but you kind of like do the motion of running, and you're just like, I'm sort of going. Cham was just shouting, "You should check out my goal at Watford. It's really good."
And then the late goal from Vinicius Junior for the hat trick, which a lot of people pointed at Nuri Sahin's decision to take off Jamie Gittins and then also Daniel Marlon. But maybe this Real Madrid is just irresistible. They've never come from behind when they were losing 2-0 at half-time before, but they have come from 2 goals down just in general. They did that, of course, at Anfield in the 5-3.
Yeah. 5-2, was it?
5-2? Oh, 5-2. Sorry, yeah. 5-2. Absolutely.
I mean, as we mentioned on Sunday's show, in the Premier League this season, it's a record rate of comebacks from 2 goals down. So there's something afoot. But the fact everyone's noticing proves it is an outlier.
I don't know that it does. There's something, I'm no psychologist, but there's something about a 2-goal lead that leads managers to make decisions like, well, the job's done. And possibly players on some kind of micro level to also figure that the job is done, they're going to change their approach.
I think part of the reason 2-0 feels dangerous is because even 2-0 becoming 2-1 and then a nervy finish feels like you've lost something when you haven't. So do you know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
No, that is
that contributes to the discourse, I think.
But the problem is that people describe it as the most dangerous lead in football.
I mean,
and that's a 1-goal lead. So,
well, I guess it's the most relative to how comfortable it seems or can. Like, I don't think
the most deceptive.
Exactly, deceptive is the thing.
If we switch to deceptive, I'm going to be the spokesman.
Oh yeah,
I'll be the spokesman. That's
t-shirts
fine.
Printed.
Yeah,
right, okay.
Yeah.
2-0, the most
they just chose the wrong D word.
Most deceptive score. Right. Yeah. Woof. Wow, I think we've covered Real Madrid, Borussia Dortmund. Have we? Is there anything else we need to say?
Very quickly, obviously that El Clasico game coming up, Thibaut Courtois and Rodrigo Goes are both out injured. They picked up muscular injuries, so it wasn't all plain sailing for Madrid, and Andre Lunin will likely have to come back in after he deputised very well for Thibaut Courtois for the majority of last season, but had a very difficult European Championships for Ukraine as well. So it'll be interesting to see how he does while he's thrown back in at the deep end.
Absolutely. And a couple of days after that, you've got the Ballon d'Or ceremony on Monday night, which I'm sure we'll all be tuning in for. Will it see Vinny Junior awarded with yes, it will, apparently.
I imagine so. And obviously the hat-trick will have no actual bearing on it, but it can't be
when were the votes
bad
actually...
to score it, just as a sort of like, people nodding a bit more when it's announced.
When were the votes actually, whatever it is that votes are done? Yes.
I think it's Friday is the deadline. That might be wrong, but I think
really.
They've still got until Friday.
Yeah,
but I think it's to cover a specific period. It ended in July, maybe.
But that's true. But still, you're planting seeds.
Did you see the Champions League? No, that's
Can't let that affect you.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. Huge weekend around Europe. Not just the Classico at the Bernabeu, but you've also got the Derby d'Italia. Juventus and Inter, that's on Sunday night. Sunday night as well, we'll see PSG and Marseille going at it in Le Classique. Often happens.
But independent fixture computers magically conspiring.
Yeah, we pondered this on Tuesday's Totally Football show, and how regularly it does seem to happen. And in the Premier League, of course, you got Arsenal-Liverpool.
But isn't it also partly because some slots, certainly in England, you can rule out for having a big game? and by extension, there'll
Probably
be others that
so.
are more likely to have a big game.
Probably
this being
so.
one of, there's no reason why this shouldn't. Whereas your Boxing Days, your first game of the season, your last game of the season aren't going to have a big game.
I hear you. Well, how big a game is Arsenal-Liverpool? We'll be discussing that next. Sunday, 4:30, Charlie's friends at Big Fixture Computer have come up with Arsenal-Liverpool for your entertainment. Of course, both sides were involved in Champions League action midweek, both securing 1-0 wins. Liverpool, away at RB Leipzig. The RB team's having a really rotten midweek, actually. Lots of work for their new head honcho. Darwin Núñez with Liverpool's goal. Arsenal, meanwhile, were 1-0 winners at home to Shakhtar Donetsk, but at some cost. Because adding to their lengthy absentee list was Ricardo Calafiori, who went off with a knee injury, the full entity of which we're not yet aware. Mikel Arteta saying it's not great news. Of course, for Sunday, you've also got William Saliba out after his red card last time. Martin Odegaard, Jurrien Timber are both out. And Bukayo Saka, we understand, not going to feature neither.
Well, he could.
Feature.
Arteta said he was unlikely, but Arteta's
mind
injury
games?
bulletins are to be taken with a pinch of salt.
Okay.
So I don't think he's been ruled out yet. He could feature.
What does Mikel do now? Who comes in for all these players?
It's a really tricky one he's got because they have so many defenders.
Yeah.
Like they're lucky that they have the surfeit of defenders because most teams, if they were missing 5 or whatever it is that they might be, would be struggling even more. But I mean, Saliba being out is a huge blow, which means they'll probably then have to play Ben White at centre back. Ideally, you would then play Timber if he's available, but he probably won't be. You could move Partey back there. Kivior will come in probably. If Calafiori's out as well, maybe he plays left back. He could also play centre back. Miles Lewis-Skelly actually came on as the left back when Calafiori went off and did well. But to basically make his full debut in the Premier League against Salah.
Right.
There's also Zinchenko, who Salah has had his merry way with previously, so that would be a big call, especially seeing as Zinchenko hasn't played for a while.
Which position is it? Saliba's that Arsenal fans will be most nervous about going into Sunday's game,
As opposed to like Odegaard or Saka's, or defensively. I mean, I think all of those. I mean, Saka and Odegaard are so rarely out. Since Odegaard signed permanently in August, they'd never been without both of them for a Premier League game. 3 years. It's kind of crazy to then take out Saliba, who's probably their best defender, and was also on the right side. So it's all that kind of right-sided area.
Yeah,
and then you're moving Ben White infield, so it's a lot for them to deal with.
And last season, Arsenal's right side was probably the most creative fulcrum in world football. And
the most constant.
Yeah, and we've seen 2 games now without both Saka and Odegaard, and Arsenal's chance creation in both has been pretty turgid. So it's a concern.
I do think as well, it's kind of amazing with Saka how good he is that you see guys like Sterling and Jesus, who are, multiple Premier League winners,
right?
Very, very good players who admittedly are maybe past their best, and they look just levels off Saka. I mean, it's amazing how good he's become.
In that game. It was okay.
He was good.
And he had a shot which was saved, but it's just Saka's always there when he plays in that position. He can take the ball, and it just opens up the pitch so well.
Wouldn't it be a slice of football narrative if it was Sterling who came in and really, against his former side,
I feel like he tends to struggle, certainly at Anfield when he played for City against them in those big games. I remember, that Joe Gomez one where he kind of barged him to the floor or whatever it was.
And Trossard's a concern as well. His form's not been great.
Well, I thought that though watching Liverpool yesterday, and they were able to kind of rotate, bring players on and off, and how Arsenal would love to be able to do that. But they're at a point where they're kind of like, if you're fit, you're playing because we can't rotate. Whereas
Which
Trossard,
is where Liverpool were last season.
Exactly. But Trossard is exactly the kind of player who you'd be saying he's been a bit off it. And to be honest, Trossard normally is the 12th man, and he's great in that role. He's one of those guys who he's brilliant coming on and impacting games late on. Then he does so well that it's kind of, sort of need to start him, don't we? And then it's
conundrum, isn't it?
exactly, yeah. But he is kind of often better coming off the bench.
Okay.
Or certainly not playing every game.
I think this Saliba absence though that doesn't just impact the fact that he's a really, really good defender who's unavailable, but I think his presence for Gabriel, he makes Gabriel a much better defender. I think their partnership's really strong. But I think also one of the things that I've noticed, having watched Arsenal games live, is how much organising Saliba does and how much he's instructing other players around him of where to be and where they should be positionally, which is, I think every team needs that, and you don't always see that when you're watching games through TV, and you can't really measure it through data, but when you see that impact on the pitch, he is such a crucial part of that back line, and to have him absent, like Arsenal have struggled without him in the past.
The numbers say less than half, 45% of their games in the Premier League without him since he debuted.
Yeah, well, their title challenge in 22-23 basically fell away when he missed the last 10 or so games with that back injury. I think as well with him, he's also really important to how they attack. And actually, if you look at Arteta's signings, a lot of how he's built up the team, he starts with the defence because it's all so interlinked. It's not just how good a defender is. So, yeah, it is a really big blow.
And Liverpool, away from home, where they're on a tremendous roll. They won the first 6 away games of the season for the first time in the club's history. They dispatched RB Leipzig with relative ease. Is that fair? I must admit, I wasn't totally across this game. You were, I think, Charlie. You tuned in for this.
Yeah, it was a weird game. They probably should have been more than 1-0 up. And then when they weren't, and that 1-0 is a genuinely dangerous lead, then late on, Red Bull Leipzig did create quite a few chances, and it could easily have been 1-1. But yeah, they could have won it more comfortably.
Close range finish from Darwin Núñez, who has the same syllables and letters to cite his name as David Nugent.
There you go.
Yeah,
Just
it was a bit of that kind of goal snatching from
Mo Salah's.
Yeah.
Salah looks fine with it though. I do think that Arsenal might be happy with a draw in this game, given the circumstances, and because if they lost, the gap stretches, which is tough.
I mean, this fixture last season was a very similar situation where Liverpool went in with a lead, and if Arsenal, it was kind of early Feb, and if Arsenal lost, they were basically done. Or so, that was the talk, and they won that day. And actually, on that day, it was Liverpool who had the injury problem. Salah and others were missing. But it's quite interesting as well on Slot's really good start. The list has gone out of the other managers with the best starts after 8 Premier League games, and a lot of them have really fizzled out.
Your Phil Browns.
Well, he's actually, I don't think quite makes the list, but he must be. But he must be close. Solskjaer is number 1. And yeah, John Gregory's in there.
Yeah. Maurizio
Sarri, slightly surprisingly.
Big Phil Scolari had a good start at Chelsea, didn't he? Or am I dreaming?
He is in there. Yeah. So yeah, I mean,
I think this game's particularly interesting to see who gets the first goal. No, I mean, obviously the first goal is always important, but
dangerous lead,
the most dangerous apparently. But Arsenal fans, I've noticed recently, have become maybe a little tetchy about how their team approaches some of the matches that they have, and I think they're a restrained team, okay, in the sense that they're never gonna go all out attack, and they're never gonna be like, say, Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool used to be whenever they tried to race into a 2 or 3 goal lead. They contain teams and they like to take advantage of their mistakes. I think I made the comparison before that the Jose Mourinho Chelsea. There's more elements of that approach in them than I think any other top team. I think they wait for opponents to make mistakes on the ball. I think that was the case against Bournemouth last week whenever Martinelli had that huge chance when Kepa played the ball out, and they could have gone 1-0 up, and we could have been talking about that as a tactical masterclass of how to approach a game of 10 men, but instead he missed that chance, and obviously it looks sort of in hindsight that Arsenal kind of didn't really go for that. They sort of didn't limp to a 2-0 defeat, obviously 10 players, but that's the narrative changing. So I think that if Liverpool go 1-0 up, and the elements of control that Liverpool have had in their games once they go ahead have been pretty impressive. I think their speed of play, I think, has dropped under Arne Slot, but their approach and their intricacy is still very similar. And whenever they went 1-0 down against Nottingham Forest, against a team who did sort of have a low block and just let Liverpool have the ball, but didn't give them any space in the final third, they really struggled with that. And that's been their one hiccup so far. I think Arsenal might maybe not go quite that extreme, but I think the fans, it'll be interesting to see how they react to being the home team and how the fans will react to Arsenal's approach to this game, because I think there will have to be a compromise. And I just want to see how Mikel Arteta sets his team up for this.
Absolutely. Round about 3:15 on Sunday afternoon, we'll get a look at the team sheet, Colin. Man City, meanwhile, this weekend, Duncan,
I was
unless...
going to make one quick point about...
Oh, what was that?
Colin, you mentioned Mourinho in Arteta-ness, but Liverpool are on course to concede 14.25 goals this season. That's not going to happen, clearly, unless the Premier League start awarding quarter goals. But that Mourinho record we never thought would go, it won't.
Man City this weekend are in action Saturday afternoon. They played on Wednesday night. They established the longest unbeaten run in Champions League history with a 5-0 win over Sparta Prague. We mentioned Erling Haaland's kind of volley flick. His other goal was pretty good as well. They just looked good, didn't they, City?
Yeah?
Yeah, absolutely.
That run has caused consternation, though.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, because obviously...
Shootout loss.
Because in there you've got the penalty shootout defeat to Real Madrid. Does it count as a defeat?
I think it makes more sense for it to not count as a defeat in a two-leg setting. If it's just a one-off tie, I think you'd say they've lost it. But I know you don't technically.
I think you do.
Do you know what it is? I think before they got rid of the away goals rule, I would have argued strongly that it should count. But now, I don't know, it doesn't feel as watertight to me.
Surely, had it been on a coin toss, you wouldn't have said that they lost that game. Of course, in a sense of qualifying for the next round or the final, whatever, that would have a bearing.
Did used to be the way they did it.
Yes.
So,
but the fact that you go, well, this football match has come to an end and we weren't able to decide it, so we'll have to invent another competition, auxiliary. And an example of this is the fact that when Emi Martinez, when he picked up a yellow card in the penalty shootout in one of Villa's European fixtures last season, it didn't add to the one he'd already picked up in regulation time. So it is considered a separate entity to the match. And the match, Man City hadn't lost. Oh my God, that was dull. Let's just move on. So anyway, they didn't need penalties against Sparta Prague, that's for sure. 5-0. This weekend, they are taking on Saints, who are not having the best of times of it. They have gone 21 Premier League games without a win, Southampton. Man City, by way of contrast, on a club record, 31 Premier League games unbeaten. A lot of people, Duncan, wondering if we might see double figures.
nah.
No?
I mean,
Southampton are the team for that, aren't they? With
so
two
9-0
fairly recent
specialists.
9-0 defeats.
One of them in Manchester.
Yeah.
But, no, this will be 6-2.
Really?
You think 2? I don't know. Maybe 5 or 6-1.
Tyler Dibbling will want to show up in front of Pep and get a little bit of post-game tactical advice, which he likes to hand out.
I mean, Southampton were pretty decent against Arsenal away a few weeks ago. They went ahead and, could have drawn that game, push for an equaliser. But no, I mean, obviously City will win this game 5 or 6-1. Haaland will score 3 and everyone will quickly forget about it.
Obviously.
Southampton are one of those teams that look like they're a better team than they are in terms of results. They'll keep the ball a lot, and I think that's slightly deceptive in terms of how successful that they're going to be. I think it's interesting that they have stuck with Russell Martin so far, and I'm not saying he should lose his job.
We're only 8 games into the season.
Yeah, but they've got 1 point, and they're
Millar.
The nature of that defeat against Leicester was pretty damaging. But I think what it does show is that Southampton are willing to stick with this approach. I mean,
Burnley last season.
I think if you want to change the way they play, they would have made a change in management. But I think maybe they're looking at this now like, well, there's more benefit in sticking with what we've done so far.
Maybe what they're looking at is their record in 1998-99 when they actually failed to win any of their opening 9 matches, as may well happen this time, and went on to survive. They stayed up. They did go the second half of the season unbeaten at home, which helped, but...
Was it the Dell, the tight Dell?
Oh, yeah.
With Dave Jones.
Matt Letizia. Cloudless
Marion
skies.
Pahars. What a time it was.
All right, anyway, that's Man City Saints. We should round up some of the other things that happened midweek, though. We haven't talked about Celtic yet. What a fine draw. What a performance by Kasper Schmeichel away in Bergamo as they held Atalanta to a 0-0 draw. Celtic have now got 4 points from 3 matches and their first Champions League clean sheet in 7 years.
It was interesting. Brendan Rodgers ahead of the game said, "It is not in my DNA to sit back. That is not me, and it never will be me." Until they sat back in this game, and it was a great result. I was looking at the XG for this. Atalanta's was 2.33, Celtic's was 0.26. What's interesting is Celtic lost 7-1 against Dortmund, and Dortmund's XG was only 2.91 for that game. So I mean, obviously, there's a lot of other factors other than just the chance creation.
Non-lead, no.
But I guess this just shows the difference in kind of game state, finishing, all these other little things. Kasper Schmeichel had a really good game. He made a couple of really good saves. I mean, yeah, I suppose in terms of a Celtic point of view, every point is really important because they're targeting 24th upwards.
Where do they lie in the league?
They are currently in 20th place.
Oh, so in the playoff spots.
Yes, and obviously that defeat against Dortmund damaged their goal difference, but they did win 5-1 in the opening match day, so that sort of balances it out. And I mean, I think
they played 2 away. They must have done, haven't they? So they've got a home game in hand.
Their 2 toughest fixtures, and I think we spoke beforehand in one of the other podcasts that they have statistically the easiest run of fixtures of any of these 36 teams. Yeah,
really.
So yeah, they'll fancy themselves to pick up certainly at home a couple more points.
I don't know if there's any Celtic fans at UEFA, but it almost feels like this entire new system has been designed to make it exciting for Celtic. And our projections, powered by Opta, which you can see on the Athletic, have got them like with a pretty even chance of finishing anywhere between roughly sort of 20th and 27th. So it's going to be exciting. I think, it will liven up bleak January days.
Guys, one thing that's quite weird about this new Champions League format, and I guess quite interesting, is that you don't really know necessarily what your fixtures, how hard or easy they're going to be until it starts. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, that team's 7th. I thought they'd be kind of lower mid-table or something. And actually we've got hard games, or we've actually got easier games than we thought.
Unless it's, Red Bull Salzburg, and then you're like, wow.
Any other midweek results that we should touch on? Perhaps Lille beating Atletico Madrid. They went a goal down. Bruno Genesio's side, the team that had beaten Real Madrid in the last match day, but they came out 3-1 winners against the other Madrid side. Genesio becoming only the second manager ever to beat Pep Guardiola, Jose Mourinho, Carlo Ancelotti and Diego Simeone in the Champions League. The other man to achieve that feat being Jurgen Klopp.
The really interesting thing about this was that Lille have got the Derby du Nord against Lens at the weekend. Ooh. And they had the fact that Jonathan David, Angel Gomez and Bafoude Diakite, who are a very regular defender in their back line, they were all rested essentially for this. And I saw a couple of French commentators suggesting that this was a case of, we've beaten Real Madrid. This is a game we're probably not going to win. So let's sort of give those guys a rest before the big game at the weekend. And obviously to go 1-0 down quite early on, and they got the equaliser early in the second half. And whenever they brought those players on, that sort of helped transform the game. Lille, they get a very controversial penalty, I've got to say, for the second goal. I have seen this replay multiple times, and I don't know why it was given. So there is that. But Atletico Madrid have lost 4-0 against Benfica in this group stage. That was the second round of games, and now they've lost this. They're 7 points off the top in La Liga, and that is despite their massive transfer outlay this summer. Julian Alvarez, Conor Gallagher, Robin the Normand, Alexander Sorloth. They spent a lot of money, and they don't seem to be going anywhere particularly fast. But Lille really impressive, and we spoke about the French sides earlier, but that's the league I think that is really impressive.
Okay, Atletico Madrid's next game on match day 4, early November. We'll see them at PSG. Be interesting. Other games to look forward to next time include Inter against Arsenal, Club Bruges against Villa, Sporting Club de Lisbon against Man City, Liverpool, Leverkusen, Xavi Alonso, ! And Real Madrid, Milan. Ooh, it's two teams with the most Champions League or stroke European Cup trophies.
Just before we end the Champions League chat, can I just quickly mention that Sporting Club, because I meant to talk about them in the first week and I'd forgotten. And they are one of the top 8 teams as it stands at the minute. And obviously, the Portuguese teams we're used to Benfica and certainly Porto in Europe being sort of regulars in that last 16 onward stage. But there's been a bit of a power shift the past couple of years, and Ruben Amorim is a really, really good coach. And just the way they play football, if you have a definition of a well-coached team, it is that they've got such a clear identity in what they do. But also Victor Gyökeres, who scored the second goal in this game. We talk about players not taking it round the goalkeeper. He took it round the goalkeeper and then round the last-ditch challenge defender. The composure in that finish was unbelievable. He has scored 63 goals for club and country since joining Sporting at the start of last season. Obviously, the Portuguese league isn't quite as strong as some of the other top leagues, but that is the level of an Erling Haaland. And he scored 4 against Porto. He scored 2 against Benfica. He's scored quite a few in the Champions League as well. So you kind of think he's got a very big money transfer.
Yeah, but he looked great for Coventry as well. And I thought it was a bit ridiculous that a Premier League club didn't buy him then. But yeah.
And he was on the books of Brighton. Obviously, Brighton's recruitment is well known, but played 8 first-team games, but never in the Premier League. And you could make an argument that that's probably their biggest mistake in recent years, has been allowing him to leave for I can't remember the fee, but it was to Coventry on a permanent deal, so it wouldn't have been that high. But yeah, he's one of the standout players in Europe at the minute.
Sporting, very nice. Okay, next up, let's get on to the rest of the Premier League weekend. Your fixtures in the Premier League begin on Friday night. Leicester take on Nottingham Forest in a very special game for Steve Cooper, of course. Forest, who were in action only last Monday evening, a night on which they beat Crystal Palace 2-0. It wasn't 2-0, 2-1?
1-0.
1-0. Did they have another goal disallowed? No, I looked over and saw a replay and thought, they've scored another. Chris Wood again, nice.
And another.
They're currently up in 8th spot. Yeah.
Go 5th if they win this.
That's so true.
Champions League spot. Forest and European Cup. Have they ever been in that before? No one knows.
No. There's no early game on Saturday. Don't look for one. At 3 o'clock, there's Man City Saints, the Lord Panic briefing Classico. Brentford against Ipswich. Brighton Wolves. And Villa Bournemouth, the Harry Redknapp's Address Classico. At tea time, Everton face Fulham. It's Marco Silva taking a trip down memory lane on Sunday. 4 matches. 3 of them at 2 o'clock. I'm not sure which one of these is on TV. Perhaps you can tell me. You've got still winless Crystal Palace welcoming Spurs to Selhurst Park. Is that on telly?
I don't think it is.
You've got Chelsea getting a visit from Newcastle, and you've got Man United visiting West Ham. Is that the TV bigwig Supremos? No?
It's Chelsea-Newcastle.
Chelsea-Newcastle, all right. Well, that's a game with plenty of history to it. And then at 4:30, as we mentioned previously, Arsenal.
Booba Diop, Classico.
Yeah, very nice. Very nice. All right. Today is the 24th of October, and that means that today is the 20-year anniversary of
Pizzagate
/ Battle of the Buffet.
Yeah, with Pizzagate, not that Pizzagate for the American listeners.
Right, yeah.
Not that one.
Different.
When, if you are unaware of events back on the 24th of October 2004, a very mean-spirited clash between Manchester United and Arsenal, which saw Arsenal's unbeaten run ended on 49 matches, was followed by a dust-up featuring flying foodstuffs. My question is all about this. What was pizza doing in the tunnel?
It's surprising in a few ways because A, when do you start cooking the pizza, or when does it get delivered? And B, Wenger came in as Mr. Pasta, didn't he? Mr.
Yeah.
So what?
Isn't there that thing that you can basically eat whatever you want to straight after you've done
it's true.
A really high level exercise like that?
You didn't have like a buffet. As you walked off the game, you could just kind of...
I imagine it was, a few choices.
That's quite a standard thing, though, isn't it? As you mentioned, like the calorific
they
foods,
can have anything,
like sandwiches,
well,
pizzas,
that's sort of been debunked a little bit now. But in 2004, that was very much
certainly would have been then. Because even a few years ago, I think that was
I'll
the
quote
conventional wisdom.
Wikipedia to you. There were accusations that certain foodstuffs, usually reported as pizza, but occasionally reported as coffee, tomato soup, or pea soup, had been thrown at Sir Alex Ferguson by an unknown Arsenal player. It was like a kind of village fete.
Pea soup. It was in 2004, not 1894. But you don't need to look at Wikipedia because today on The Athletic there is a full oral history of the day.
Magnificent. Does it explain what the pizza was doing in the tunnel?
It explains all of that.
Does it?
It includes Wes Brown likening the events to a medieval shield wall, essentially.
Jousting?
No, because the tunnel was so small that the two sides were pressed against each other in anger, but there was almost no room to swing a punch because it was so heaving with raging players and staff.
Pizza.
Testosterone.
And pizza.
And molten cheese.
But I mean, one of the most seismic days of Premier League history. I mean, I think for younger listeners who... The build up to this game, you know, Arsenal going for the 50, and no matter what people say, it is a nice round number, and it was a huge thing. And it was almost inconceivable that they would lose at that point.
Well, also the fact that a year earlier there'd been another battle, the Battle of Old Trafford, which was 0-0 and was the closest Arsenal came to losing in that unbeaten run. Van Nistelrooy, who never missed penalties, missed a penalty. Keown jumped on him. I mean, that was such a hugely eventful game. And it is, you know, we've heard it a gazillion times, but, you know, they really did hate each other. There was like Van Nistelrooy was loathed, and then he then scores this redemptive. This time he gets a penalty, which he
Very
scores.
Soft penalty.
Yeah, I mean this game. It's I think it's Mike Riley.
It is.
It is. I think younger viewers would find it fascinating to watch some of the tackles that fly in. I mean, poor, God rest his soul, Jose Antonio Reyes takes an absolute battering from the Nevilles. Yeah.
I mean, Phil Neville almost played as he was in midfield, but he almost played as an auxiliary right back with his brother in a kind of Cray twins going around the pitch.
Like sort of tag team wrestling stuff.
There's also one Van Nistelrooy early on in the first half, I think on Ashley Cole, does one that would be now VAR'd and it's a red.
Possibly, although I'm no fan of VAR, a
yeah,
great case
it kind of
for-
is because there is so much happening and clearly the referee just can't really make sense.
It was the sort of game that led to the we can't let this go on.
Exactly.
We need some sort of reviewing.
And they swiftly took action.
But this is such a, you know, Phil Neville, United beat Arsenal in 2002 in the 02-03 season, and he played Phil Neville in a kind of hatchet man central midfield role. And there's this big myth about Fergie that he always played amazing football. He did what was needed to win. Like the term pragmatic is used to describe Mourinho wrongly. Fergie was pragmatic. He would play whatever way he thought would win for that moment. And this was another example of this. He wasn't above saying we're going to absolutely roughhouse this team because I don't think we'll beat them playing football. But then other times he would say, no, this team is good enough to beat anyone on its day and we're going to attack them and play our way.
And they weren't even that good, Manchester. I mean, this was almost a sort of mutually assured destruction, this game, because it just let in Mourinho's Chelsea to them win the league. And United, for the next few seasons, were terrible and really had to rebuild. Obviously, Rooney had come in, Ronaldo coming in, but it took a few years for that team to
they came third this season for the second year running.
And that rivalry had been English football. I mean, it's obviously, Arsenal haven't won a league title since, which is two decades on. It's remarkable to think back then, but Arsenal and United were so omnipresent at the top of that table that even with the investment in Chelsea, you still thought Arsenal and United were on that sort of pedestal at the top, and they felt untouchable in terms of the power of those teams. And I think that you're right, Charlie. Those players did hate each other, genuinely hated each other. I mean, it wasn't just the fact that they really wanted to win; it was the fact that it was against each other. It's like sort of like the north of England against the south as well, and these ideals of like what the kind of the background of everything that all played into it, and it had gone on over so many years and culminated in those two games really, but especially the end of this one.
Well, there was even the one back in the early 90s where both teams got docked points, so it was an ongoing thing. But even it comes across in Euro history where United players still, the loathing they've got for Fabregas, even 20 years on, is still there, and it's good. You know, I mean, that's kind of what makes. That's why we're talking about it 20 years later.
So true, so true. And if you feel, listening, like you'd like to see more people talking about it, Ollie Kay's tremendous oral history is available today on The Athletic. Man United these days would dream of a third place finish in the Premier League. They're currently down in 12th spot as they approach another opponent from the capital this weekend. It's West Ham. Erik ten Hag's team will be visiting the London Stadium. Of course, before that, Thursday night, today as we record, they are also away from home in Turkey in what could be an extremely significant match against Fenerbahce and Jose Mourinho, who's had a quiet build-up, not said anything controversial.
It does feel like Mourinho has been preparing for that press conference ever since that draw was made. He was thinking about what he was going to say. He's had about, 2 months to think about it, and he delivered. As usual.
No Mo Kudus for the next 3 matches for West Ham because he picked up that red card for extreme naughtiness, really, against Spurs. The Hammers have only won 4 of the last 18 Premier League matches. Yikes! A lot of tension for both managers, I would suggest.
I think maybe the Thursday night's game in Turkey could sort of exploded again. But I think the Ten Hag talk has slightly been quelled after the international break. Obviously beating Brentford last week with a pretty decent performance, I think, overall. I think it's important to state this isn't the Man United of last season when they were total chaos. I think their main flaw this season has just been not scoring enough goals whenever their chances have come along. But when you see that front three clicking against Brentford, there's maybe positive signs that there's sort of green shoots that could be emerging, but you never want to go in too soon on that because, as we've seen over recent times, Man United are never too far from a crisis. But West Ham, the way they pretty much collapsed, I think, against Tottenham was kind of alarming. And I pointed it out on Saturday, but the amount of money they've invested, not just in the summer in that squad, but the whole changing of coaching staff was completely geared towards, I mean, you have to say European qualification, and they look so far off a team with any identity. And Kudus is their standout player. He's got a 3-game ban for violent conduct, and that actually could be increased because it's an FA charge towards him. So we'll see. He could be out for even longer than that.
He's sort of could have been sent off twice.
3 times.
He really does. It's an incredible head loss.
All right. What else grabs you this weekend? You got Aston Villa currently in 4th place. They're hosting Bournemouth. Another of those Basque battles on the benches, if you're not bored of them by now. Emery against Iraola. Aston Villa, who were 2-0 winners against Bologna midweek, with John McGinn and John Duran scoring. Duran, who started this game, was then subbed and was not particularly happy about it. But you want that. You want that from your player.
You'd be disappointed if he wasn't sort of smacking things and being really mardy on the bench.
It's been a good season for plastic seats being flexed by staff. Pep Guardiola, didn't it? A few years ago. So, yeah.
So true. Villa became the first team since Leicester City to win their first 3 Champions League games without conceding a goal. That's if you ignore the fact that they were previously in the European Cup. But yeah, anyway. Brighton are 5th. They face Wolves. Crikey.
I mean, just on Villa, it is. Does it maybe speak to the fact that we're still getting to grips with this new Champions League format that we haven't really talked about that? Because that is an amazing achievement, what they've done. But it all just feels still a bit abstract and whatever. Whereas I think if they'd won their first 3 group games and were more or less qualified already, we might be saying, wow, like what an unbelievable start. And, you know, maybe we are just, we've got used to how well Emery's done, but this is unbelievable what he's done in less than 2 years.
I mean, we've said it recently, but we're 5 years on from the cabbage being thrown at Steve Bruce, 2 years on from Steven Gerrard getting the boot, and the top of the Champions League. Do
you want to know what their fixtures are coming up in the Champions League?
Bruges.
I certainly do. You got Bruges away, then at home to Juventus. Juve got beaten by Stuttgart this midweek. Then they go to RB Leipzig, who are having a rotten time of it. Then they go to Monaco, which, interesting. They host Celtic, and then they're up against Wickham. Oh, no, sorry, that was the English League Cup. That was next on the list.
Wow.
One day.
I mean, Wickham will be in the Champions League one day, but not quite yet.
Okay. Anyway, that is Aston Villa. 5th behind Villa in the Premier League are Brighton. We'll be taking on Wolves this weekend. Wolves, who are having a rotten time of it. They've had 5 defeats in a row. They're one of 4 teams yet to get a victory this season. We're 8 games into the campaign, which is the first time that we've ever had that many teams still winless. Crikey.
I mean, Wolves have had the most difficult start fixture-wise. This is like their last hard fixture for quite a long time. So it's almost like it's a bigger test for the Wolves board than it is for Gary O'Neill, because it's like, even if they lose this, do you go, okay, well, it's been tough, but I think there were some signs against City that they're okay.
Oh, and Vieira got sacked, and Palace brought Roy Hodgson in,
and then they went on a lovely little
and they
run.
had this really nice set of games.
But the caveat to that is that Gary O'Neill's Wolves were probably particularly good against the top 6 last season, and actually kind of routinely struggled against teams you would probably expect them to beat. And then they lost 5-3 at Brentford as well, not too recently. I mean, if you're conceding 5 goals against Brentford, it probably speaks to deeper problems. I think that game against City was very well suited to them, and they're a fun team to watch, but their defensive numbers are you can't have that. You can't have that in the league. You need to change.
Indeed.
There are sheep in wolves' clothing.
Nicely done, Duncan. Chelsea, who are currently 6th, host Newcastle. That's the game you can watch at 2 o'clock on Sunday. Chelsea are in Greece Thursday night, taking on Panathinaikos in the Conference League. Newcastle coming into this game winless in 4. They've only ever had 1 victory at Stamford Bridge since the dawn of the Premier League. Do you recall that game?
Of course.
Why do you recall it, Charlie?
The Papi Cisse game.
Yes.
He scored both, but yeah, the one obviously everyone remembers is that ridiculous
second.
banana shot.
The most sensible soccer goal you'll ever see.
It was absolutely mad.
Yeah.
I looked at it this morning on YouTube, and the headline was the greatest goal ever scored in the Premier League with full caps lock. What do you think?
No.
No? Why not?
There's a few bad goals. But it is the most unusual goal
Right.
I think I've ever seen. Like, it literally
It's the definition as well of, like, you talk about striker being bang in form and just trying things. He was so... He
had
was
such
in
an
red
amazing
hot form.
start to
Basically,
that.
every time he shot, he seemed to score.
That was his 13th goal in 12 matches.
Yeah. And Chelsea won the Champions League that season, but Newcastle finished above them.
Madness.
But Newcastle didn't quite qualify for the Champions League.
Currently, Newcastle down in 9th place, but only 2 points behind Chelsea in 6th. So there you go.
Well, this is obviously, these are two teams who've got very similar ambitions this season. Like, if either of these sides miss out on top 4, especially
Or 5.
or 5, but especially without having sort of Champions League demands. I know Chelsea are in the Conference League, but you can rotate your squad for that. So I think that there's a real opportunity for them to sort of build something this season. But you kind of think both things, because Chelsea got a new project under Maresca, and I'm still not sure. I'm still not sure if it's going the right way or not.
Okay.
Because
I think I'm quite encouraged when I've seen them, and including even against Liverpool. I mean, obviously, defensively there are issues, but for the first time these last games, I thought with Chelsea under Bowley, sort of see what they're trying to do here.
But it's that group of teams, Chelsea, Newcastle, Tottenham, and Man United as well, probably, that you think they all have the potential to be very, very good, but they all also have quite obvious flaws. And I think this game's going to be quite interesting as well, just to talk around Newcastle, around Eddie Howe. I mean, they've only scored 8 goals in 8 league games this year, and their strikers have been off form. Obviously, Isak has been out injured. Yeah, coming in and out of the team, and I think it makes it difficult. But they had such a long period of momentum whenever they qualified for the Champions League, and then had a very strong first half of last season. And when things kind of go wrong, it's quite hard to get that back. In that sense, so yeah, it'll be interesting how this one.
I think it's interesting. I've seen a few Newcastle fans say that they obviously had to sell Yankuba Minter and Elliot Anderson for financial reasons, but a few Newcastle fans made the point: why not just take the points here and have those 2 players, because they're so good and they've started so well for their respective teams this season that it almost kind of underlines what they didn't manage to do in the summer, which was kind of evolve the team.
Well, I was going to say, my brother actually made this point. It's not mine, but he was saying Forest are
What's
actually...
your brother called, Charlie?
Thomas.
Thomas Eccleshare.
Yeah. I mean,
What do you think of dangerous leaders?
But he was saying the other day that Forest are in a way a good example of why it does pay to kind of violate the PSR things. I mean, you look at all these teams... Well, you look at all these teams that have come up and haven't done that and just gone straight back down with a whimper. Forest bought a load of players, broke the rules, got docked a couple of points, but by that point that was even the season after, wasn't it? So they'd established to a point where they could absorb those points, and now they're 8th and everyone loves them and is saying like, they're
Good team building.
good sensible team building. But whereas I don't think anyone's looking at Burnley or whoever and being like, well, good on them for abiding by the rules and obediently going straight back down again.
Point.
Word on, Forest, who picked up 3 good points on Monday with that victory against Crystal Palace. And they take on Leicester. As mentioned, of course, big game this for Steve Cooper, currently Leicester boss. Anything we should note about Forest and the Crystal Palace win? Anything we should note about Palace and their current predicament?
Palace look all right in the middle of the pitch, but then they've got no sort of cutting edge. They had over 20 shots in this game, but a really low XG. It's almost like they've taken a world-class attacking player out of that team and not replaced him.
Again, I mean, talking about PSR, I don't know how much that was a consideration, the fact they haven't replaced him, but I mean, they are really suffering.
They are the lowest scoring team in the Premier League this season, just 5 goals in 8 games. They're off to a worse start than the Frank de Boer season. Worse than the Frank de Boer season. Crikey.
I think what's really notable about that Palace performance and obviously the pattern this season is just how lacking in confidence a lot of their players are. And that goal that they conceded, the wayward Chalobah header, and then the Dean Henderson just letting the ball trickle under his wrist. I mean, it was one of the worst goals you could possibly concede. Certainly at that level, it's almost inconceivable that two such basic mistakes in the one move. But so many, as you said, so many shots at goal. But the last 10-15 minutes, you kind of expected an onslaught, and there was just nothing. And they won 6 of their last 7 matches last season, and obviously that was with Elise, but they had Mateta banging for him as well. And now it's sort of like, well,
he's not been starting, has he, Mateta?
Yeah. Glasner feels quite existential. He's sort of talking in quite a sort of it's all going wrong sort of way, which is never good from managers, and you need a bit of spark.
Anyone else think of Vizzini when you said inconceivable there? Just me?
Oh, what, from Princess Bride?
Yeah.
Yeah, great reference.
Spurs are going to be visiting Crystal Palace this Sunday at 2, which could be fun because they do score goals, lots of them. They also have Europa League commitments this Thursday night. They host AZ Alkmaar. They've won their first 2, have Tottenham in that competition. Other matches, and I'm going to fly through these a bit because we've been borrowing your time for a fair while now, haven't we? Brentford are up against Ipswich on Saturday. By contrast to the likes of Palace, Brentford's games are the most goal-filled in the Premier League this season. There's an average of over 4 goals per game. 33 goals in 8 matches. Crikey. Ipswich, by contrast, have had the fewest shots on target, fewest touches in the opposition box, and the lowest XG of any side in the Premier League thus far. Everton have got 2 whole wins now, and they're hosting Fulham on Saturday tea time. This is 16th against 10th, but there's only 3 points between them, so, still pretty fluid, your Premier League table.
Obviously, Marco Silva going back to Goodison Park.
Very, very much so. Slithering back.
Well, there is the snake history, the Watford angle too. I mean, Everton, I've been quite impressed with them recently, and I'm just loving Dwight McNeil in that hole. The hole, maybe not that hole. Although you never know.
Any hole you care to mention? Sorry, Charlie.
No,
thanks for rescuing
the 4 winless teams and the fact that hasn't happened before.
Yeah,
you can see that in the fact there's already this fairly big gap opening up to Everton in 16th, which at this stage of the season is pretty unusual to have.
Oh, I was suggesting it wasn't that big a gap.
Well, no, it's not a big gap from Everton up.
Oh,
as
right.
in Everton up,
After
that is
Everton,
pretty small, but Everton down.
There's 4 points.
There's 4 points, and then 5 to Palace, and Southampton and Wolves already are 7 points off them.
Oh.
So, and Everton, I think, they're quite good. They're going to continue to pick up wins.
So the bottom 4 points adrift of the rest of the division, and they are
detached.
Well,
As the
Ipswich,
clocks
Crystal
go back.
Palace, Saints, and Wolves.
A lot of people don't look at the league table till the clocks go back, but that happens this weekend.
That happens this weekend.
Yeah, they won't look at the league table on Saturday, but Sunday morning they'll be like,
Sunday at 1 a.m. or
What time is
whatever
it?
goes back.
what? There's a 4-point gap? It might be bigger.
Might be bigger.
It might be less.
Excellent. Well, that's the Premier League weekend ahead, and that's today's totally football show, almost. But
I think I've said this before, but it still baffles me. But just on the clocks going back, when ITV showed the First Division before the Premier League, they didn't start showing live games until the clocks went back, because someone at ITV reckoned that until the clocks went back, people would do gardening on Sundays, and so there was no point showing live football. And I sometimes remember that and just shake my head. Just like good games in September.
I wonder what the viewing figures are like prior to the clocks going back. Whether the allotments, the call of the allotment is impacting.
I think a lot of people now aren't even aware the clocks change because it all happens automatically.
Oh, yeah,
I think
so
it's easy to just for it to
unless
pass
you've
you
got
by.
one that doesn't change automatically. Like, for example, say your kitchen oven clock. Which
They
Yes.
never do they?
they never do.
No one changes it.
No,
I would say most people in the UK have
No,
6
I do,
months a
but-
year when they're either
I'd
an
say
hour.
cars more. Cars are quite fiddly. Often the little clocks are quite fiddly to change, and you just get used to it. You're like, it's going to be wrong for half the year. I'm fine with that. I can do the additional.
That's right. So
subtraction.
you can leave us. We'll just continue rambling here for a while. There you go. Enjoy everything, please. Thank you for being with us today, listener. Many thanks as well to Pol Ballus earlier on, Charlie and Duncan and Colin, Liam and producer Charlie in the booth. We'll be back Sunday evening with our thoughts on Matchday 9. Hopefully see you then. For now, from all of us here, it's goodbye. The Totally Football Show podcast is available 3 times a week, bringing you all the football news you could reasonably be expected to care about. We've got views, we've got stats, we've got analysis, we've got some of the best football writers around, and the whole thing is absolutely free. So have a listen on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or all the usual places by clicking on the link below.